It's been a bad accident, very bad.
There was a stab wound inside his ear.
Has the state failed Paul?
Yes, they have.
I got the call that Murray had shot Josh.
You're talking about care of some of the most vulnerable people in our society.
You're working with a population who literally cannot tell you if they're being abused.
In 2018, a mother sent us an email. She told us another resident had stabbed her intellectually disabled son more than 90 times at an adult foster care home. Her email took us into a world that few know about, the system funded by Texans to protect the disabled. We did dozens of interviews. We scoured investigative reports and medical records and made countless open records requests. Our years-long investigation uncovered a system that often puts the disabled in danger, over and over.
I love you, Paul Taylor. Hi. Where's Ernie?
Paul Taylor's 33.
Where does that one go?
He's autistic,
Oh, no.
with the mind of a 2-year-old. He needs constant supervision.
There you go. Give him a hug. Aw, show him.
As people like Paul get older, they sometimes become more than their parents can handle. Rather than putting them in institutions, the state pays to keep them in homes run by providers who hire, train, and pay people to take care of their disabled clients around the clock.
They're all funded by tax dollars, and therefore I think the state has a legitimate role to ensure safety in these facilities.
In 2018, Paul's mother, Susan Taylor, placed him in this adult foster care home in Dallas. It was one of thousands like it across Texas. From the street, they look like any other house, but they're actually part of a network that houses and cares for about 26,000 Texans with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
It's not an easy job. It's a very physically and mentally demanding line of work.
But sometimes these homes can become a crime scene.
Dallas 911.
I need an ambulance.
These pictures and videos may be hard to watch,
Look at the blood in his ear.
but it's important you see what these families have endured.
The dark in his head are all stab wounds. It makes me sick.
The guy that did this, he lives there as well.
He lives here and he left because he knew he was going to jail.
Gary Goodman, another mentally disabled man living in the home, confessed to attacking Paul with a screwdriver.
What's up, man?
Hey, I know you.
11 months earlier, in a different home, body cam shows police arresting Gary after a violent incident. Paul's mother had no idea Gary had a history of violence.
What's going on?
He assaulted one of the other guys here in the home.
Why?
Because he messed with me.
Gary, where'd you punch him? In the face?
In the face.
Has he done this before?
Yeah, he assaulted staff a couple weeks ago.
Don't put the cuffs on too tight.
Yeah, we won't. Okay, I'm gonna take care of you.
No one told Susan about Gary's violent past.
I will see.
She had no legal right to know because of medical privacy rules.
It's unacceptable.
What kind of position does that put you in?
I can't make an informed decision if I don't have all the facts.
That's where taking the safety precautions, when they are put in place to protect people, they're actually putting people in danger.
Had I been told, I would never put Paul in this home.
But based on a recommendation by her provider, she'd put Paul into a home run by caretaker Rufus Hardy. Gary already lived there, and a few days after Paul moved in, he hit Paul, giving him a black eye. 911 wasn't called. Susan wasn't told.
Had Rufus Hardy just told me about the black eye, this whole thing could have been avoided. I would have pulled him immediately.
4 days later, Rufus Hardy did call 911.
It's been a bad accident, very bad. Blood all over his clothes, oh my God.
All of the stab wounds on the head and the neck, in the ear. It was a Phillips head screwdriver.
When you saw Paul in that hospital bed,
he was still clutching his Ernie. And I told him, I'll make you better.
An investigation would later find Hardy left his disabled clients in the care of an untrained caregiver overnight. And that person said he didn't hear the attack. Hardy told state investigators, "I feel like I did everything possibly I could to keep each client safe." The state's conclusion? The allegation that Mr. Hardy neglected Mr. Taylor is confirmed.
There's a part of me that just pities him. He was paid by the state to take care of my son. Outrage is an understatement.
Despite the neglect finding, Hardy could still care for the disabled. Under Texas law, state regulators could not suspend caretakers while they appealed findings of abuse, neglect, or exploitation.
It is remarkable that someone could be found guilty, essentially, of abuse or neglect and be allowed to continue working while they appeal their case, which can take years or potentially never be resolved.
Eventually, Hardy dropped his appeal. And 11 months after Paul's attack, the state placed his name on the Employee Misconduct Registry. That meant he could no longer take care of people like Paul.
However, there's other caregivers like him out there. Paul got off lucky. He lived through it. There's others that haven't lived through it.
No lo salvé de esa gente, Dios, no pude.
Raul Olguin was autistic. As he grew up, his intellect remained the same as a toddler.
Todo para mí, oiga, todo. Yo lo bañaba, yo lo cambiaba, yo todo.
Raul lived with his mother all his life, except the last 71 days, when he was living with his new caregiver, Sharita Brandon.
Eat it.
This is video of Brandon feeding Raul. Brandon knew Raul was losing weight, lots of weight. By the time Raul died in April 2019, an autopsy showed he weighed just 85 pounds.
He needed the support system from his provider, from Adult Protective Services, from all these other entities, and yet they failed him.
Like any mother caring for a growing boy, his mother Maria spent a lot of time in the kitchen.
Siempre tenía todos los días, sí. Todos los días comía, le daba yo de todo.
He was always a very tall and thin young man, but he never looked malnourished.
Anna Ortiz knew Raul well. She used to be his caseworker.
He required a lot of care and a lot of attention.
In January 2019, Maria was accused of neglecting to take Raul to dental appointments. His provider, the company paid for by the state to oversee his care, removed him from her home. State records show the allegation of neglect was unconfirmed. But by then, he was living in Brandon's Garland home.
Mom never got to see a healthy Raul after that point.
The company's supervisors periodically checked on Raul and noted his extreme weight loss. One supervisor said, "The caregiver would say he won't eat, but when we witnessed him eating, he would gobble up his food like he had not eaten." The supervisor also said Raul never had that kind of weight loss before moving in with Brandon.
He loved to eat. That's one thing I recall from him. He would always be in the kitchen, getting his mom's attention to make him something.
Maria provided WFAA her text messages with Brandon. Brandon tells her he is doing good. "I believe he really likes it here. We just came from Chuck E. Cheese." Brandon also says, "I guess he likes chicken and shrimp Alfredo." Then on April 1st, 2019, Brandon sent this photo to Maria.
That's a completely different person. I couldn't even recognize him. Seeing like an actual live video of him, you could see from his arms just how thin he was. His face, his features are completely different from the Raul that I met.
On April 3rd, 2 days after the photo was sent, a nurse practitioner at a medical clinic described Raul as well-developed and well-nourished, and said the same thing after seeing Raul on April 8th. 2 days later, the provider removed Raul from Brandon's care and transferred him to a home in South Dallas. Raul's new caregiver said Raul looked very emaciated. His bones were visible. On his second day at the new home, Raul collapsed, vomiting a black substance. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital.
Me quedé en un cuarto asustado. Me dijo el doctor, su hijo acaba de fallecer. No pudimos hacer nada por él.
An autopsy found he died of aspiration pneumonia. It also said malnutrition contributed to his death.
You're working with a population who literally cannot tell you that they're hungry. They literally cannot tell you if they're being abused.
State Health and Human Services Department investigators couldn't determine whether Brandon abused or neglected Raul. The final result was inconclusive. The Texas Board of Nursing found the nurse practitioner who saw Raul days before he died failed to appropriately intervene when Raul began losing weight.
For someone to deteriorate and to ultimately die in a way that people can't draw a conclusion or where there's confusion makes absolutely no sense. It's not like he was isolated for days and someone found him. People saw him every single day.
Sharita Brandon declined to speak on camera with us. But she told us via text he lost weight because he wouldn't eat. All I could do was my best.
Tal vez digo yo, sí, teniendo conmigo aquí estuviera mejor, pero no lo salvé de esa gente, yo no pude.
As we looked into Raul's death, we found something else that raised this question. Should Brandon have ever been taking care of Raul? In 2004, while living in Arkansas, she pleaded guilty to stealing money from a federal child care program. A federal judge ordered her and several accomplices to pay back more than $800,000. But when she moved to Texas and applied for jobs taking care of the intellectually disabled, those providers were only required to check for Texas crimes. So they missed her federal out-of-state conviction. Had they conducted a nationwide fingerprint background check, they'd have found it.
There needs to be an upfront criminal background check, a thorough one. The consequences of a mistake are huge.
WFAA reported Brandon's criminal history to the state's Office of the Inspector General. They concluded her convictions excluded her from taking care of the disabled and that she concealed her conviction history. The result? The state permanently barred Brandon from working with people like Raul.
He should never have been in the situation that he was in. And had we had enhanced and more robust background checks, perhaps his story would have had a different outcome.
Next,
thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members,
a North Texas lawmaker fights to improve the system. And another loophole allows guns inside group homes, costing an intellectually disabled man his life.
What did I do?
Inside a Dallas police interview room.
Why am I here? What did I do?
Murray Masewe finds himself trying to figure out how he ended up there.
What the
He just shot Joshua Moore, the 27-year-old man with autism the state paid him to care for.
Stab me with a freaking knife, man.
I got the call that Murray had shot Josh. I was in shock when I heard the words.
Joshua's father placed his son in this southeast Dallas group home, expecting him to be safe.
We didn't know Josh had passed until we had talked with the chaplain down at the hospital. Devastating.
Don Moore wanted to know, how did Joshua get a knife in there? And why did Masewe, the caretaker, keep a gun in a group home with vulnerable people? Don would soon learn Texas law does not forbid guns in group homes.
What if Josh had accessed the weapon just as he did the knife and shot the caregiver or another resident? It's very possible that that scenario could have played out.
Joshua Moore grew up in Rowlett. He was intellectually disabled and didn't begin talking until age 7.
He was quite the comedian.
He was social, and in high school he joined an all-male cheerleading squad.
Inclusion was important. All types of clubs and programs, and Josh would want to be a part of that stuff. So there was that. And, You know, he had his downtimes where he would just get frustrated and not want to do anything.
As an adult, his mind stayed at the level of about a third grader.
He wanted to learn skills and work and earn an income, but there were things he did not understand, and it would frustrate him, and that's when the behavior disorders became more prevalent than they had been in the past.
He became more volatile.
Behavior-wise, yes. I mean, physically, he would get aggressive with me.
Eventually, Joshua became too much for his family to handle, so Don moved him into a group home. His father admits Joshua started to become aggressive with his caretakers.
Plano 911, tell me exactly what happened.
Back in 2017, this call came in from a Plano group home where Joshua lived.
One of our clients tried to attack me. How exactly did he attack you? With a knife. Where's the knife now? He still has it in his hand.
He had access to a paring knife. We don't know when he got the knife or how he obtained it.
In the spring of 2021, Joshua moved into a group home in Dallas run by Azina Place. The company hired Murray Masewe to care for Joshua.
I didn't have any reservations about Murray. I thought he was a younger guy. He would interact with Josh well. Polite individual, kind.
He told investigators he'd read Joshua's behavior plan and knew Joshua shouldn't have access to knives. Records show Masewe initialed a daily log indicating he'd locked up sharp objects, including here, on the day he shot Joshua in July 2021.
He was just ranting in the morning about his parents and not having a job anymore. I guess my arm brushed up on his arm. He says, "Don't you brush up on me again like that. If you do next time, I'm gonna hit you," something like that. I stated to him, no violent talk. That word no. What you told him no? He hits me. The table, he just pushed it over. And that's when I noticed in his hand he had his knife.
Masewe says he left a knife out on the sink along with other dishes. He said he grabbed his gun from a kitchen drawer.
I grabbed it. Josh, I'm trying to get by. Josh, I'm just trying to get by. Josh, I'm just trying to get by. He took some lunge at me. That's when I let it.
Did you think he was going to cut you with that knife?
Oh, yeah.
An Azina Place official told a state investigator, "I didn't even know he owned a gun."
Heavenly Father.
A grand jury later cleared Masewe, finding he shot Joshua in self-defense.
I've been a good man.
But a state health and human services investigation found he neglected Joshua by allowing him to get a knife and then shooting him with a gun.
The answer is never to take a life. I can't answer as to why that became the only option available. Only Murray knows that in his heart when he was there in the moment.
Thank y'all for coming today.
Oh, absolutely.
Don reached out to his local lawmaker for help.
From my perspective, the process fails.
State Representative Chris Turner and his staff met with Don and his wife.
You can't bring a firearm into a hospital or a nursing home or a number of other types of facilities, and there should not be an exception for these types of long-term care facilities.
We also told Turner about Paul Taylor and his caretaker, Rufus Hardy. Recall in that case, we discovered a loophole that allowed caretakers to keep caring for the disabled while they appeal an abuse or neglect finding. Just like Hardy, the law allowed Masewe to keep caring for the disabled while he appealed.
It really speaks to the overall lack of regulatory oversight in a really critical area. You're talking about care of some of the most vulnerable people in our society.
Turner sponsored bills seeking to close the loopholes identified in WFAA's Disabled in Danger investigation. One requiring national background checks, another requiring that caretakers be immediately suspended after a finding of abuse, neglect, or exploitation of a disabled person, and a third banning guns in group homes called Joshua's Act.
The legislative process is designed to kill bills and not to pass bills.
In Texas, the legislature meets in regular session every 2 years. The sessions run 140 days, and out of every 8 bills filed, only about 1 of them becomes law.
It is very difficult. There's several dozen steps to pass any bill through the legislature, and your bill can die on any one of those steps.
In the final days of the session, it appeared only the background check bill would become law.
There is an amendment.
But a last-minute amendment resurrected Turner's suspension bill.
I think it's proper to put these two bills together and keep them moving.
Amendment is adopted.
In the final 3 days of the session, Turner had convinced a Republican state senator to offer the amendment.
Secretary, call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Birdwell.
31 ayes, no nays. Bill's finally passed. Thank you.
You just have to sort of be a squeaky wheel, and I think that paid off in this case.
As of September, it's state law that national background checks must be done, and that caretakers be suspended once found to have abused or neglected the disabled.
Hey, buddy, you want a snack and apple juice?
How are you?
It's been a long time.
It has been, and it's been a journey.
It has been, but we did it. You did it.
5 years can feel like an eternity when you're waiting for change that may never come. But the wait was worth it for Paul Taylor's mother, Susan.
I didn't expect to react the way I did when I read your Facebook post about the legislation passing. I wept.
A lot's happened since Susan Taylor sent us that email in 2018. The adult foster care home that her son lived in is now closed, and so is the one run by Raul's caretaker. Our reporting led the state to ban his caretaker from taking care of the disabled due to her criminal history. There is a new law on the books as a result of our work, but there is more change needed. The medical privacy rules that prevented her from knowing the violent past of the man who attacked her son remains unchanged. And firearms, they're still allowed in group homes, even after the death of Joshua Moore.
The overall lack of regulation in the space is a continuing concern.
Don Moore vows to keep fighting to ban guns in group homes.
I have every intent of getting that law passed, no matter what it takes or how long it takes.
Paul's mother says she'll fight right alongside Don.
They can't speak for themselves. I just thank God that he survived it. Because Raul and Josh, they weren't as fortunate.